should live with them, but my mother forbade it, enjoining me, on peril of incurring her displeasure, not to leave her, and reminding me of all the benefits I have received from her, and of the necessity of making an adequate return. And ungrateful indeed I should be if I did not comply, for, though her manner is cold and harsh to me, she has never ill used me, as she has done her favourite child, my little sister Jennet, but has always allowed me a separate chamber, where I can retire when I please, to read, or meditate, or pray. For, alas! dear young lady, I dare not pray before my mother. Be not shocked at what I tell you, but I cannot hide it. My poor mother denies herself the consolation of religion, never addresses herself to heaven in prayer, never opens the book of life and truth, never enters church. In her own mistaken way she has brought up poor little Jennet, who has been taught to make a scoff at religious truths and ordinances, and has never been suffered to keep holy the Sabbath day. Happy and thankful am I that no such evil lessons have been taught me, but rather that I have profited by the sad example. In my own secret chamber I have prayed daily and nightly for both, prayed that their hearts might be turned. Often I have besought my mother to let me take Jennet to church, but she never would consent. And in that poor misguided child, dear young lady, there is a strange mixture of good and ill. Afflicted with personal deformity, and delicate in health, the mind perhaps sympathising with the body, she is wayward and uncertain in temper, but sensitive and keenly alive to kindness, and with a shrewdness beyond her years. At the risk of offending my mother, for I felt confident I was acting rightly, I have endeavoured to instil religious principles into her heart, and to inspire her with a love of truth. Sometimes she has listened to me, and I have observed strange struggles in her nature, as if the good were obtaining mastery of the evil principle, and I have striven the more to convince her and win her over, but never with entire success, for my efforts have been overcome by pernicious counsels and sceptical sneers. Oh, dear young lady, what would I not do to be the instrument of her salvation?" "You pain me much by this relation, Alizon," said Dorothy Assheton, who had listened with profound attention, "and I now wish more ardently than ever to take you from such a family." "I cannot leave them, dear young lady," replied Alizon, "for I fear that I may be of infinite service, especially to Jennet, by staying with them. Where there is a soul to be saved, especially the soul of one dear as a sister, no sacrifice can be too great to make, no price too heavy to pay. By the blessing of Heaven I hope to save her, and that is the great tie that binds me to a home only so in name." "I will not oppose your virtuous intentions, dear Alizon," replied Dorothy; "but I must now mention a circumstance in connection with your mother, of which you are perhaps in ignorance, but which it is right you should know, and therefore no false delicacy on my part shall restrain me from mentioning it. Your grandmother, old Demdike, is in very ill repute in Pendle, and is stigmatised by the common folk, and even by others, as a witch. Your mother, too, shares in the opprobrium attaching to her." "I dreaded this," replied Alizon, turning deathly pale, and trembling violently. "I feared you had heard the terrible report. But, oh! believe it not. My poor mother is erring enough, but she is not so bad as that. Oh! believe it not." "I will not believe it," said Dorothy, "since she is blessed with such a daughter as you. But what I fear is that you so kind, so good, so beautiful, may come under the same ban. I must run this risk also in the good work I have appointed myself," replied Alizon. "If I am ill thought of by men, I shall have the approval of my conscience to uphold me. Whatever betide, and whatever be said, do not you think ill of me, dear young lady." "Fear it not," returned Dorothy, earnestly. While thus conversing, they gradually strayed away from the cherry tree, and, taking a winding path leading in that direction, entered the conventual church, about the middle of the south aisle. After gazing with wonder and delight at the still majestic pillars, that, like ghosts of the departed brethren, seemed to protest against the desolation around them, they took their way along the nave, through broken arches, and over prostrate fragments of stone, to the eastern extremity of the fane, and having admired the light shafts and clerestory windows of the choir, as well as the magnificent painted glass over the altar, they stopped before an arched doorway on the right, with two Gothic niches, in one of which was a small stone statue of St. Agnes with her lamb, and in the other a similar representation of St. Margaret, crowned and piercing the dragon with a cross. Both were sculptures of much merit, and it was wonderful they had escaped destruction. The door was closed, but it easily opened when tried by Dorothy, and they found themselves in a small but beautiful chapel. What struck them chiefly in it was a magnificent monument of white marble, enriched with numerous small shields, painted and gilt, supporting two recumbent figures, representing Henry de Lacy, one of the founders of the abbey, and his consort. The knight was cased in plate armour, covered with a surcoat emblazoned with his arms, and his feet resting upon a hound. This superb monument was wholly uninjured, the painting and gilding being still fresh and bright. Behind it a flag had been removed, discovering a flight of steep stone steps leading to a vault or other subterranean chamber. After looking round this chapel, Dorothy remarked, "There is something else that has just occurred to me. When a child, a strange dark tale was told me, to the effect that the last ill fated abbot of Whalley laid his dying curse upon your grandmother, then an infant, predicting that she should be a witch, and the mother of witches." "I have heard the dread tradition, too," rejoined Alizon, "but I cannot, will not believe it. The all benign power would never sanction such terrible imprecations." "Far be it from me to affirm the contrary," replied Dorothy; "but it is undoubted that some families have been and are under the influence of an inevitable fatality. In one respect, connected with the same unfortunate prelate, I might instance our own family. Abbot Paslew is said to be unlucky to us even in his grave. If such a curse as I have described hangs over the head of your family, all your efforts to remove it will be ineffectual." "I trust not," said Alizon. "Oh, dear young lady, you have now penetrated the secret of my heart. The mystery of my life is laid open to you. Disguise it as I may, I cannot but believe my mother to be under some baneful influence. Her unholy life, her strange actions, all impress me with the idea. And there is the same tendency in Jennet." "You have a brother, have you not?" inquired Dorothy. "I have," returned Alizon, slightly colouring, "but I see little of him, for he lives near my grandmother in Pendle Forest, and always avoids me in his rare visits here. You will think it strange when I tell you I have never beheld my grandmother Demdike." "I am glad to hear it," exclaimed Dorothy. "I have never even been to Pendle," pursued Alizon, "though Jennet and my mother go there frequently. At one time I much wished to see my aged relative, and pressed my mother to take me with her, but she refused, and now I have no desire to go." "Strange!" exclaimed Dorothy. "Everything you tell me strengthens the idea I conceived the moment I saw you, and which my brother also entertained, that you are not the daughter of Elizabeth Device." "Did your brother think this?" cried Alizon, eagerly. But she immediately cast down her eyes. "He did," replied Dorothy, not noticing her confusion. "It is impossible," he said, "that that lovely girl can be sprung from but I will not wound you by adding the rest." "I cannot disown my kindred," said Alizon. "Still, I must confess that some notions of the sort have crossed me, arising probably from my mother's extraordinary treatment, and from many other circumstances which, though trifling in themselves, were not without weight in leading me to the conclusion. Hitherto I have treated it only as a passing fancy, but if you and Master Richard Assheton," and her voice slightly faltered as she pronounced the name, "think so, it may warrant me in more seriously considering the matter." "Do consider it most seriously, dear Alizon," cried Dorothy. "I have made up my mind, and Richard has made up his mind too, that you are not Mother Demdike's grand daughter, nor Elizabeth Device's daughter, nor Jennet's sister, nor any relation of theirs. We are sure of it, and we will have you of our mind." The fair and animated speaker could not help noticing the blushes that mantled Alizon's cheeks as she spoke, but she attributed them to other than the true cause.